The Galactic Council chamber had never felt so suffocatingly silent. Representatives of 47 star-faring civilizations sat frozen, their collective brilliance dimmed by a single holo display, Vexkari warships advancing across the outer colonies. "Well," Grand Ambassador Zeloth finally muttered, his sarcasm sharp enough to cut through the tension. Thanks to the universal translators, no species could miss the bitterness. 10,000 years of peace, prosperity, and enlightenment, only to end beneath the jaws of interstellar locusts. I shifted uneasily in my seat. I am Trazax, third-ranked envoy of the Quillian Federation. I knew, as everyone here did, that the Vexkari were not a foe to be mocked. They were a hunger-given form. World ships the size of moons stripped entire systems bare. Planets, asteroids, stations, reduced to base matter, consumed and remade into more of their kind. They weren't malevolent. They weren't even cruel. They were inevitable. Expansion was their nature, and we, tragically, existed in their path. Prime Counselor Norix's upper limbs trembled as she spoke. Ambassador Zura of the Ominar Syndicate, report on our defenses. Zura rose, her luminous skin flickering with stress signals. Our fleets have engaged the Vexkari at 7 fronts. 83% of our capital ships are gone. The remainder regroup at Century Hub. Projected odds of halting their advance, 12%. A hollow laugh echoed from Ambassador Plex. 12%. Once we argued about tariffs with the Bell-Torin Mercantile Union. What a luxury that was. This is no time for nostalgia, snapped Ambassador Krex, his reptilian features tightening into solemnity. We need answers, not memories. But answers proved elusive. The Bell-Torin demanded negotiations, despite 17 catastrophic failures. The Jurgen Collective suggested retreating into pocket dimensions, ignoring that the Vexkari could sense trans-dimensional shifts. The Zolarans proposed a supervirus, forgetting the enemy had no biology to infect. Then a voice, quiet but commanding, cut through the noise. There is one path left. It was Ambassador Etna of the Vurian. She rarely spoke, but when she did, silence followed. "What path?" asked Prime Counselor Norix, leaning forward. Her ancient eyes, clouded with age yet sharp with focus, fixed on the chamber's core. "We could ask the humans." Chaos erupted instantly. Half the chamber protested in outrage, the other half demanded clarification. I remained frozen, hardly trusting what I had heard. Humans, the outcasts, the quarantined, the species every civilization here had agreed to isolate 2 centuries ago. Too dangerous, too volatile for the galactic community. "Are you deranged?" Krex thundered, his ceremonial collar flaring bright. "We may as well detonate our own worlds and spare the Vexkari the trouble." "They are resourceful," Etna replied evenly. "Barbaric," Krex shot back. "They discovered atomic energy and weaponized it in under 3 years. Their history is written in their own blood." Ambassador Zill leaned forward. "Yes. And imagine what they might do when faced with an enemy that threatens not a nation, but their entire species." The chamber stilled. I, too, could not help but recall our limited records on humanity. Most civilizations advanced slowly, step by cautious step. Agriculture, writing, industry, flight, space. But humans leapt. They went from first-powered flight to stepping onto their moon in 66 years. From theorizing nuclear fission to building reactors in 5. From deciphering genetic code to editing it within a century. Terrifyingly adaptive, unpredictably inventive, and yet contradictory. They fought 2 global wars before leaving their cradle, created weapons capable of burning their planet lifeless, but also crafted art that stirred tears, music that resonated even with species who had no concept of song, and stories that transcended evolutionary divides. "They are dangerous," Krex insisted. "There is a reason their system is ringed with warning beacons." "Yes," Counselor Norix said slowly, her tone deliberate. "But perhaps in this moment, danger is exactly what we require." And so I found myself assigned to the delegation, not from merit, but convenience. I had recently compiled what little we knew of humanity. That, and no senior diplomat wished to risk themselves if contact went poorly. Better to lose a third-tier envoy than a statesman. Our ship emerged from FTL at the edge of the Sol system. The warning beacons still pulsed in 2,000 tongues. Danger. Quarantined species. Do not approach. Ironic, isn't it? Murmured Captain Lorax as we passed them. We built these to protect the galaxy from them. Now we pray they can save us from something worse. We steered toward the fourth planet, Mars. Long-range scans had shown human colonies there. Better, our leaders reasoned, to meet them away from their homeworld. If matters soured, Earth might remain untouched. Receiving transmission, the communications officer said, startled. In flawless galactic standard. How? I asked. We've never spoken with them. Play it, ordered Ambassador Kizison, leader of our desperate mission. A human face appeared on the view screen. Female, I thought, though the differences in their species were subtle compared to most. Greetings, visitors, she said calmly. I am Director Maya Quinn of the Mars Colonial Defense Force. We've been expecting you. Ambassador, Kizison's mandibles clicked involuntarily. Surprise flickered across the chamber at the Mars Colonial Defense Force when the transmission cut through. You've been expecting us? Ambassador Kizison managed, incredulous. The human's smile was small, almost private. Oh, yes, she said, the corner of her mouth lifting. We detected your ship the moment it entered the system. In truth, we've been aware of the galactic community for nearly a century. My mouth went dry. The quarantine had been flawless by every metric. No intentional transmissions, no outward signals, nothing that should have betrayed intelligent life within their star system. How had they known? Ambassador Kizison asked the question that hung in the air. The human's answer was disarmingly simple. We listen, we watch, we learn. She explained without bravado how human teams had covertly adapted and intercepted observation satellites years ago, how they had decrypted the warning beacons, how they'd monitored research vessels that lingered at the edge of Sol and quietly analyzed snippets of their communication. They had learned the language of the galaxy in pieces, and they had been patient. A cold realization settled over me. This was far worse than we feared. We had assumed surprise. Instead, we met calculation. I felt the frantic rhythm of my hearts, an instinct that until now had been little more than a background hum. Please don't look so alarmed, Director Maya Quinn said, as if reading the room. Her gaze landed on me specifically. If we'd minded to break quarantine, we could have done so years ago. We honored your choice even when we disagreed with it. But make no mistake, this is not first contact. She tilted her head. So tell me, why is the Galactic Council knocking on our door now? The landing bay of Mars Command thrummed with human activity, soldiers in armor, technicians, civilians, far more than my species' long-range scans had suggested. We were shepherded through corridors of polished alloy into a conference chamber where Director Quinn stood with 3 other humans, a stern military officer, a scientist whose eyes never stopped appraising, and a diplomat who carried himself with quiet authority. General Teo Ibuki, Dr. Layla Jackson, and Ambassador Connor O'Malley. Quinn introduced them matter-of-factly. Ambassador, I blurted before thinking. The human diplomat produced a sound I would later catalog as a chuckle. We've maintained an extraterrestrial diplomatic corps for nearly 50 years, he said. Optimistic, perhaps, but preparedness suits us. Seated, Ambassador Kizison delivered the Council's plea, the Vexkari offensive, the catastrophic fleet losses, the extinction-level threat sweeping across civilizations. He spoke with the measured desperation of a species grown. Accustomed to protocol, his voice modulator, translating their urgency into tones that still carried the weight of centuries of diplomatic caution. Throughout the briefing, the humans betrayed no panic. If anything, they seemed intrigued, almost exhilarated by the problem. When Kizison finished, Director Quinn considered the facts as one might an interesting case file. You've come to ask for help against a foe your combined forces cannot defeat, she said. An enemy that consumes worlds and refuses all contact. Correct? Kizison's affirmation was flat, the sound of hope fraying at the edges. And you quarantined us because you deemed us too violent and unpredictable, General Ibuki observed without expression. The quarantine was precaution, Kizison replied. Careful. Dr. Jackson let out a quick, sharp laugh. Precaution, she echoed. diplomatic code for, "We were afraid of you." None of us responded. Silence answered that truth. Ambassador O'Malley leaned back, a half-smile playing across his face. "It seems the galaxy now needs what we have, whether you like it or not. You will help us?" I asked, the question tasting both hopeful and ashamed. "Of course we will," Director Quinn said, as if this were the most natural request in the universe. "We're human. Fighting impossible odds is, frankly, our species' pastime." As we left the chamber, I fell into step beside Dr. Jackson. "Why help us?" I asked quietly, "after you were isolated like that?" Her expression was complicated, equal parts sorrow, amusement, and something like hunger. "You know what we love?" she said. "A redemption story. Especially when we get to be the heroes." She paused, then added matter-of-factly, "The risk? Enormous." "Catastrophic," I supplied. "Exactly," she said, and the words settled between us like a promise. I must have looked bewildered because Director Quinn smiled knowingly. "Absolutely," she said with certainty. "You see, Trazax, humans have a saying, 'May you live in interesting times.' It's meant as a curse. But for us, we thrive on it. Our entire history has been nothing but crises: ice ages, volcanic winters, plagues, climate upheavals, even asteroid strikes. And yet here we are. Survival isn't unusual for us, it's instinct." She leaned forward, her expression sharpened with quiet intensity. "To us, the Vexkari aren't the end of the galaxy. They're just Tuesday." I didn't understand the reference, but her confidence was at once terrifying and oddly reassuring. Within hours, I witnessed something that defied precedent, human ships mobilizing at astonishing speed. Not just warships, but everything that could fly. Mining vessels, retrofitted freighters, research craft pressed into service. I asked why, and General Ibuki answered with unnerving calm. "The Vexkari devour and repurpose everything. So do we. Our mining ships dismantle asteroids faster than their harvesters. Our fabricators can adapt matter for new purposes mid-battle. And every captain in this fleet has something they never will." "What is that?" I asked. "Perhaps conventional strategy conceded defeat long ago," Admiral Reyes said, voice low. "As one human philosopher put it, insanity is repeating the same action and expecting a different result. You have failed 43 times. Maybe it's time for something that looks like madness." Her words landed like a challenge. The Vexkari arrived exactly when predicted. Vast world ships the size of moons crawling out of FTL, trailed by swarms of harvester craft. From the observation deck of the Phoenix Dawn, I watched those leviathans glide forward. Implacable, efficient, utterly indifferent. Magnificent, aren't they? Commander Felix Navarro murmured at my shoulder. He regarded the enemy with a complicated expression, part horror, part admiration. "Beautiful?" I echoed. "In the way a perfect predator is beautiful," he said. "No waste, no hesitation. That predictability is a weakness." As the human formation met the Vexkari, their tactics shattered every conventional doctrine. Rather than lock into a defensive ring, human squadrons dispersed into irregular, unpredictable patterns. Fighters made sudden feints that looked almost random. Mining and cargo vessels took up positions that made no obvious sense to the seasoned officers of the combined forces. "What are they doing?" High Admiral Z barked over the comms. "Mapping response vectors," Admiral Reyes answered, steady as ever. "They're teaching the Vexkari to reveal themselves." For nearly an hour, the engagement resembled a deliberate dance. Human losses were minimal. Damage to the enemy was initially negligible. Confusion rippled through the galactic forces. Then, with crisp calm, Reyes issued the command, "Execute Operation Trojan Horse." At once, the scattered human ships converged. Instead of ramming the hulls, they detonated volleys of missiles at carefully calculated, apparently empty points in space. I stared, baffled. "What are they targeting?" "There's nothing there." "There is," Commander Navarro said with a thin smile. "The Vexkari use quantum-entangled nodes for fleet communication. They're invisible to normal sensors. Dr. Patel's team identified them by the subtle energy signatures we measured during probes. The effect was instantaneous. The Vexkari swarm, once a seamless organism, splintered as vessels lost synchrony with central command. Formation cohesion dissolved. Phase 2 unfolded without fanfare. Human mining and cargo ships surged inward, not with guns, but with enormous electromagnetic nets stretched between hulls. They cast a lattice that captured dozens of smaller harvester vessels. "Those aren't combatants," I said, incredulous. "Salvage and conversion platforms," Navarro replied. "The Vexkari consume and repurpose. We're doing the same, only in reverse. Automated factories escorted by the salvage flotillas whirred to life behind the nets. They processed the disrupted Vexkari matter and repurposed it into munitions, missiles and shrapnel forged from the enemy's own substance. Watching raw Vexkari biomass become weapons against its origin was almost obscene in its logic. "You're weaponizing them," I breathed. "Recycling, more like," Navarro said. "They wanted to consume us. Instead, they'll fuel their own defeat." He bared his teeth in what I now knew was a smile. "Imagination, and the burning need to test ourselves against a worthy adversary." I felt a chill ripple through me. "You've unleashed something you don't fully understand, Trazax," he added. "I hope you're ready for the consequences." As I watched the swarm of human ships rise from Mars, a question gnawed at me. Had we made the galaxy's salvation, or its greatest mistake? Prime Counselor Norik's words echoed in my mind. Perhaps what we need right now is dangerous. The humans were dangerous indeed. The only question was, dangerous to whom? The human fleet departed Sol with breathtaking efficiency. Within a single Earth day, over 3,000 ships assembled, a force that dwarfed anything I had imagined. Aboard the Phoenix Dawn, their flagship, I met Admiral Elena Reyes, calm, steady. Her gaze carried a ferocity no words could capture. "You seem surprised by our response time," she observed as I studied the tactical display. "My people would need months to organize such a fleet," I admitted. "The Galactic Council took 16 days merely to authorize our diplomatic mission to you." Reyes arched a brow. 16 days of debate while colonies burn? Inefficient. "With respect, and yet," I said, "your species united in ours. I was led to believe humans were divided, fractured." She laughed, a genuine sound. "Oh, we are. Right now, there are 7 major arguments happening about how best to fight this war." She shrugged. "Difference is, we argue while moving toward the fight, not before." For the first time, I glimpsed what they called multitasking. Where most species deliberated, then acted, humans seemed to debate, plan, and charge forward all at once, sometimes while joking about matters no other culture would dare speak lightly of. "What is your strategy?" I pressed. "The Council lost thousands of advanced warships already. What makes you different?" The corner of Admiral Reyes' mouth curved. "The Council fought conventionally. We don't intend to. Then how—" "You'll see," she said, her eyes gleaming. "At Centauri Hub. That's where your forces are still holding, yes?" "Barely. They have perhaps 3 days before the main Vexkari fleet arrives." "Then we'll be there in 2, she said, her voice carrying absolute certainty. True to her word, 48 hours later, the human armada emerged at Centauri Hub, using FTL configurations our scientists had dismissed as theoretical impossibilities. Relief and unease rippled through the remnants of the Galactic Defense Forces. High Admiral Z of the Jurgen Collective, senior commander of the Council's remaining forces, looked visibly shaken when Admiral Reyes and her staff boarded his flagship. "Your vessels move." "Irregularly," he said, his 7 eyes blinking in sequence. "Our sensors could barely track you." Dr. Prisha Patel, the human science officer, replied casually, "A few tweaks to FTL theory. Inducing quantum superposition in the drive core while layering a localized time dilation field. Nothing too dramatic." The Council officers exchanged stunned looks. These were concepts their academies still debated, spoken of by humans as if they were field tests. Reyes cut through the silence. "Details can wait. We have less than a day before the Vexkari arrive. Let's talk strategy." Z gestured to the holo display. "We've positioned what remains of our fleets in a standard defensive ring. With your ships, we may hold long enough to complete evacuation. Evacuation? Reyes frowned. We didn't come here to run. Z's tone turned patient, almost condescending. The Vexkari outnumber us 3-1. Victory is mathematically impossible. At that, General Amara Jackson of the Human Ground Forces stepped forward. Her words carried iron. With respect, Admiral, our history is full of mathematically impossible victories. How? Z demanded. Dr. Patel grinned, showing far too many teeth to be comforting. By changing the equation. What followed was the most unconventional strategy session I had ever witnessed. Humans dismissed centuries of codified doctrine with reckless ease. They proposed maneuvers that bordered on suicidal, weapons repurposed from mining gear, and traps that made no logical sense until you realized logic wasn't their only tool. They even joked while planning, throwing out references to battles long past, pulling a Thermopylae, going full Inchon, phrases that meant nothing to us but seemed to spark fierce pride among them. This is madness, High Admiral Z muttered after hearing their primary plan, and yet for the first time, I wondered if madness might just be the one thing capable of saving us all. The tide turned. Swarms that had seemed unstoppable now flailed as their numbers were siphoned into human manufacturing chains. Missiles assembled from Vexkari biomass slipped through defensive matrices as if they were part of the enemy fleet until they detonated with devastating effect. Still, 3 colossal world ships bore down on Centauri hub largely unscathed, their adaptive shields shrugging off frontal assaults. Anxiety crept back into my voice. The big ones aren't taking damage. We noticed, Admiral Reyes replied, joining us on the deck. Time for Phase 3. A slender squadron peeled off, sleek, low-armed vessels with oversized drives. They were civilian science platforms, xenobiology research ships, tasked with the most perilous job. You're sending scientists into the fight? I said, horrified. Who else understands a being like this better than its biologists? Reyes asked. Watch. The research ships launched delicate probes that attached to the hulks of the world ships. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, almost imperceptibly, the Titans slowed. What are those? I said. Genetic resequencers, Dr. Prisha Patel explained from the science console. We sequenced the Vexkari signatures and built devices that introduce modified code back into their distributed control networks. Reprogramming? I asked. More like interference, she corrected. Imagine your thoughts suddenly containing impulses that aren't yours. Contradictory directives, corrupted priorities. The resequencers scramble the hive's signaling, creating internal conflicts. Across the battlefield, the Vexkari vessels began to twitch, hesitate, misalign. Once coherent swarms stalled as splintered command streams battled each other. The human fleet exploited the confusion ruthlessly. Salvage nets tightened, processing arrays accelerated, and biomass munitions rained from thousands of improvised launchers. Against the backdrop of collapsing Vexkari formations, human crews operated with mechanical efficiency, miners repurposed into assault engineers, scientists into battlefield tinkerers, captains improvising maneuvers that would have been lunacy for any other race. Jokes and clipped orders flew in the same breath. There was a strange levity beneath the focus, as if they treated catastrophe like a puzzle to be solved. By sundown, the balance had shifted. Dozens of Vexkari harvesters lay derelict, their matter consumed by human forges. The 3 world ships, though still formidable, no longer moved with the unchallenged certainty that had once filled the sky. For the first time since the alarm had sounded, a pulse of hope threaded through the combined forces. But hope was not victory. The Vexkari adapted fast. Their shields changed, their swarms reconfigured. The true test, whether this improvisational assault could scale against an enemy that learned, had only just begun. The resequencers did their work with brutal efficiency. Entire fleets began to unravel from within, their unity collapsing like a body at war with itself. The mighty Vexkari world ships turned on their own kind. Harvester arms tearing into allies they had commanded only moments before. That's horrifying, I whispered. Yes, Admiral Reyes said quietly. her gaze fixed on the carnage. But so is extinction. The Battle of Centauri Hub raged for another 6 hours, but the tide had already shifted. When the last Vexkari vessel was either destroyed or captured for study, humanity and their allies had lost fewer than 15% of their forces, a result so improbable it was nothing short of miraculous. When the guns fell silent, I wandered a quiet corridor aboard the Phoenix Dawn, trying to reconcile what I had witnessed. Humanity hadn't merely fought. They had adapted, improvised, and triumphed in ways that shattered the boundaries of conventional warfare. "Overwhelming, isn't it?" a voice said. Director Maya Quinn, who had joined the fleet from Mars only days earlier, stepped out of the shadows. "Your people fight like nothing I've ever seen," I admitted. She shook her head. "We don't fight to win battles. We fight to survive extinction. That instinct is burned into our DNA by generations of ancestors who refused to die when the odds demanded they should." I hesitated. "The Galactic Council feared this very trait. Your unpredictability, your violence. Perhaps they were right to quarantine your species." Quinn studied me for a long moment. "Perhaps. Or perhaps they should have feared what the galaxy would become without us." Aftermath and a new galactic order. 3 weeks later, I stood in the council chamber once more, but this time not alone. At my side was Ambassador Ali, humanity's first official representative to the galaxy. "The quarantine of Sol is hereby lifted," declared Prime Counselor Norax. "Humanity has earned its place among us." This time, the chamber erupted not with perfunctory applause, but with genuine acclaim. As we left the hall, I noticed the ambassador's expression, pensive, almost wary. "You don't look pleased," I said. "Acceptance," he replied, "is a double-edged sword. Stopping the Vexkari was simple. They tried to kill us, so we stopped them. But proving we can contribute to galactic civilization in ways other than destruction, that will be the true challenge." "You fear you will disappoint us?" I asked. "For ourselves," he corrected. "Our history is complicated. Every triumph comes with a shadow we must reckon with. That tension, that struggle between our best and worst impulses, is what makes us human." From the shuttle window, Earth loomed closer, blue and green and impossibly alive. Around it, the warning beacons that once enforced humanity's isolation now floated dark and deactivated. "You know what's ironic?" Ali asked. "Those weren't just keeping us in. They were keeping the galaxy out. Isolation is its own kind of danger. How so?" I pressed, "because problems ignored never improve, and allies can't help if you never let them close." I thought of centuries of council caution, of how near their fears had brought us all to ruin. "So what happens now?" I asked. Ali smiled then, a rare and genuine expression of hope. "Now we find out what happens when the most dangerous species in the galaxy decides to make friends instead of war." As Earth filled the viewport, I felt excitement and unease intertwine. The quarantine was over. Humanity had stepped onto the galactic stage, and nothing would ever be the same again.